All right, everyone, today is June 20th. It is day 97 of my journey through coding. I have not made a video in a long time, so I'm going to be actually trying to basically crunch 2.5 lessons that I've gone through into one, starting with web design, then going over GitHub and version control, and then talking about EJS and what it's like to be using JavaScript and templating. So first, I'll show you a little bit about what I've been doing when it comes to learning about web design. I thought this graphic is really telling in the story of how you really need to make sure that your design, while it is beautiful, is also practical to the user. I didn't really take a whole lot of notes with web design because a lot of it was just a lot about, I guess, memorizing some things about fonts and how to style fonts, which ones should contrast, which ones should be similar in your web development, and a little bit about color moods as well. Most of the notes that I took about when it came to web design here, you're going to actually see had a lot more to do. Whoops, wrong page. There we go. Had a lot more to do with, well, basically, I guess, some pillars and schools of thought there. It looks a little bit like it's overexposed in the camera, but the gist is that basically I looked at hierarchy tools and also some stuff about user experience, kind of really just keeping it simple no matter what you do. Now, the next thing I went into learning about was about GitHub, and version control. But before I went there, I actually thought it would be a good idea for me to go ahead and just try to mess around a little bit with some web design. So I made a website called the Tennessee Weather Desk so that people could easily either research into archive weather data or to register to sign up for alerts for specific sites. And this was really just a super rough draft, back of the envelope kind of look at how a website, or an idea I have for a website for especially agricultural agencies and basically the whole state of Tennessee, could put together some sort of resource for themselves so that they would be able to get updates on weather conditions in their area that would be inclement. And so really just kind of a run-of-the-mill. I honestly decided to go with the red, white, and blue colors only because that is based on the colors of the Tennessee flag. So I thought about gray and orange, maybe from the Vols, but orange is really kind of a weird color to use when you're trying to do some practical web design and stuff that actually looks good. And so I kind of decided to stay away from that, even though that's the Tennessee Vols. So the next thing was GitHub and version control, and learning about the working directory, staging areas, and local basically repositories. This is where I took a large amount of notes. I mean, the font here is going to be really small. It was pretty crazy, and there was a lot of memorization I saw when it came to using the terminal to put together a repository and to mess with your files, basically, to manipulate your files with the terminal using Git, and then ultimately your remote depository with GitHub. So that was really neat. And I didn't really I guess I learned a lot about it, but I didn't really find myself in a position where I was necessarily learning something new. It was a lot more about, how to use GitHub for building your website. And that was actually, I think, probably the most important part. I get the idea of working with team members and working with many different people that aren't your team members, basically to put together a website or to work on a project together. A lot of what I'm doing now is going to be kind of done solo, and so when the time comes to start to branch out, pun intended, I will probably start to go back to that lesson. So the next thing was learning about EJS and embedded JavaScript templating, and I'm just now in the middle of that series, and I'm going through scope next, but I've learned about templating, kind of a few things that I got brought back to when it came to APIs. A lot of this is just super just memorization. I mean, this latest app that we're working on building, a to-do list, which you can see somewhere in here. There we go. I mean, this is a new list item. A lot of what, and I'll do another list item. A lot of what was done in this app here that we built, memorizing these methods, that's going to take a lot of time and practice for me, because she's recommending our instructor Angela Yu is instructing us to build this from scratch now. And I just don't have a lot of these things memorized, and I get the framework here, starting with your constants and going down the list there into basically calling the post requests and using the callback function here to basically push each item into the same list. But again, a lot of what is coming up here in EJS so far seems like it's just going to be practice, repetition, and memorization. I've kind of just come to the conclusion, and I was actually encouraged because a lot of what I'm learning in coding seems to be super intuitive, and that's encouraging for me because, well, I don't feel like I'm the best learner. So if it appears obvious to me, then it must be at least a path that seems that is at least easily accessible when it comes to Google and Stack Overflow. I think that at least for me, going down this path so far and learning coding, if I've found myself, and I have a couple of times, just kind of playing around with my code and then finding it coming up in future lessons, that is encouraging that I'm finding, oh, this actually would make sense to write the code in this way. So I think that if anything, that should encourage other people to try this if they've been on the fence about it. That a lot of coding can be kind of intuitive, and Google and Stack Overflow are there when you need them too. So I'm going to stop the lesson now since it's been about 6.5 minutes recording this video. But templating and embedded JavaScript is going to be a lot of memorization, repetition before I finally can start to internalize it a little bit better. So thanks for watching.